Now, they called him L.A. Now, my nickname is L.A. I came into the league my rookie year, L.A., L.A., L.A. We get to a Dallas game, and all people said during the course of the week is, if Larry Allen pulls, chop his legs. Get down and chop his legs. I come from linebacker U. I'm not doing no chopping legs. I'm not going down. I'm not bowing down to the pressure of people talking about this guy that's an offensive lineman god for the Dallas Cowboys. Well, we get into the game. I'm 6'3", 255, grown mammal out there. They snap the ball. It's a power toss to Emmitt Smith my way. I hear, it's Larry Allen pulling. I come off that edge, and I'm going to meet Larry Allen in this backfield because that's what I do. I'm a thumper. So we're going to go head-to-head. We're going to buck like Rams right now. Only problem is he was bucking like a buffalo, and I was bucking like a ram, more like a muskox. You know, like he was a much bigger bucker with his buck than I was with my buck, and I didn't have enough knuck with my buck to knuck and buck his buck. I turned 360 degrees in the air, landed on my feet in the exact same position that I was in from starting when I hit him. I turned and looked around, and Larry Allen was still running downfield with Emmitt Smith to block somebody else. And that's when I realized what the legend was, what the story was about Larry Allen. Point of the story, if this current offensive line for the Dallas Cowboys does not establish themselves as that type of dog mentality for this team, then you're talking about a real miss and opportunity, because when they compiled this group of guys, they had that in mind, that the identity of the size, strength, and athleticism of that offensive front for Dallas was going to be just that, a physical, athletic group that can impose their will. This season hinges on what they're able to bring to the table and what they really want to get accomplished. And that's really what it comes down to if you're going to have high expectations for this Dallas team.
Well, look, I love that story, LeVar, and I'm not that optimistic about the offensive line. But, look, I think it will be good. And, obviously, the key is that they can stay healthy. What I want to see, too, from the offense, because I do think, as optimistic as I am about them, and, again, a lot of it's the division and the schedule. But as optimistic as I am about them, I do think sometimes people have gone overboard in talking about their offense. Like, I'm looking for big things from the offense. I think it'll actually be better than last year. But a lot of those numbers weren't real. A lot of Dak's numbers came after they're down big in the second half. And then teams are going to prevent, or they're playing, the Cowboys are desperate and they're playing catch-up. That's when a lot of his numbers came. So people shouldn't expect him to throw for anything near the yardage he did last year at the beginning of the season. But again, with Zeke coming back and J-Mac, you just totally dissed Ezekiel Elliott. I think he is coming back legit. And whether it's he's in shape or he's got a chip on the shoulder, I think it's both. This dude is still young. This dude was one of the best running backs in the league. And again, I'm not expecting 1,600 yards, but I am expecting him to run with more urgency and more ferocity than he has really the past few years, in my opinion. So I think that'll be big. But that offense can't play from behind all the time. They've got to jump on teams, help the defense out, and I'm looking for them to do that.
Yeah. So I don't get crushed on Twitter from the Cowboys mob on Ezekiel Elliott. Oh, his offensive line was hurt, Jason. Listen, I know this, you jabronis. Okay, Tony Pollard was running behind that bad offensive line last year as well. Put up way better numbers than Ezekiel Elliott. But let's focus on the defense.
Weren't bad.
They were better. 4.9 yards per carry to 4.3. You go on down the list. Tony Pollard was better last year.
His overall numbers were.
It was, 400-some yards on the
LeVar, you're a defensive guy. Let me just focus on the defense for a second.
It's a good 1-2 combo.
Every single level has a lot of new players, okay? You're talking about linebacker, you're talking about secondary and defensive line. You're talking about a new defensive coordinator, okay, in Dan Quinn. We'll see what happens in Hard Knocks. I think the spotlight's going to be on him. But, Chris, you mentioned a good point. Like, I just don't know if those offensive numbers are real because the defense didn't show up in the first half last year. They were getting boat raced by Cleveland. Atlanta hung 30 on them in like 2 quarters. This is a defense that I don't care how good the offense is. If you can't stop a nosebleed like the defense last year, how on earth are you going to contend in a weak division? We would agree, guys, that this is the weakest division in football, right? The New York Giants are non-factors. Okay, the Philadelphia Eagles are rebuilding. Washington, great defense, questionable offense, and Ron Rivera is going through some stuff in that offense. If you guys start reading around in Washington, it don't look good, LeVar. Maybe we'll talk about them later this week.
But they look good on defense.
Things do line up for Dallas. But
defense is great.
Do you guys trust at all, this defense to stop anyone?
I do.
Early in the season, they open, okay, again, as Jerry said, David versus Goliath, against the defending Super Bowl champions. Just want to remind you guys, Tampa Bay returns every offensive starter from an awesome team last year. LeVar, they're in deep trouble in the first 2 weeks.
That young man they keep showing 94, DeMarcus Lawrence, let me tell you something about that guy right there. He is a bona fide stud. 11, Stick City, it is a place, a bona fide draft stud. I'm calling it right now. He's going to get Defensive Rookie of the Year. You may not have seen as special a defender as Micah Parsons since I played with a kid by the name of Sean Taylor that was in the secondary. That's how good Micah Parsons is. I'm not hyping that because I've been a part of his career. I've been a part of his career because I've seen so many great players, and he is a step ahead, a cut above a lot of the guys that I have been around. And in fact, his talent level is that of someone as special as it was when I saw Sean Taylor play for the first time in person. When you look at the defensive front, you don't look at even the defensive linebacking core with Jalen Smith and Van Der Esch. This is a dope linebacking core. Like, personnel-wise, it's a dope unit. They have a couple question marks, but they have talent in the secondary. I attributed their struggles over the last few seasons to a lack of accountability and leadership in terms of what their game planning was, in terms of what the belief and confidence level of them was at that point in time. If Randy Gregory can keep himself together, he could be a big-time factor for this Dallas team. I don't look at them personnel-wise and say that they can't be a dominant defense. I look at them personnel-wise and I say, can Dan Quinn inject that belief and that nastiness that he did when he was in Seattle with that group that he had there, which this is the type of group that you can do that and they will take on gladly that identity. If you get them flying around the way they were flying around in Seattle, because in some positions you may have better players than what he even did have when he was in Seattle during that point in time. Maybe not in the secondary, but up front, he has the potential to have a dominant group. And if he can get them moving, keep things simplified, make the schematics of the defense where they can move fast and play physical, they can really be an effective group. I look for them to be a vastly changed and improved unit from what they've been in the past.
What an optimistic, I mean,
I'm not trying to be optimistic.
Are you kidding me? Seattle went to how many Super Bowls with the Legion of Boom? Dan Quinn's got that kind of talent, LeVar. Come on.
He does. I mean, look at him. Take a good look at their roster. Look at their resumes.
Yeah,
look at
Smith
the DNA
and Randy
of them.
Gregory. You're really relying on those two guys. Unreliable the last few years.
DeMarcus Lawrence is a dope edge.
No doubt.
You have 3 linebackers that are perennial Pro Bowlers or all pros, and you have some good corners, and you added a pretty good safety in what you got going on. You added a pretty good corner. Listen, they are going to be, I think they'll be okay on defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. Broussard, I joked that Dallas, on an FS1 show last week, Dallas has 99 problems. Dak Prescott's not one of them. It's funny, we've talked about 15 minutes here about the Cowboys, and we're all not concerned about Dak coming off the big injury. Broussard, I'm going to ask you this. Like, this is a guy who had a gruesome injury last year. He's now complaining about shoulder soreness from carrying all that money that he got from Jerry Jones in the offseason. Should we be concerned about Dak Prescott?
Well, look, as far as the shoulder, I'm not overly concerned about it. I just don't want it to be something that lingers all year. This is the type of injury that, yeah, he could play through. It'll bother him a little bit, but it'll bother him all year. I'm not saying it will, but that could happen. So I want them to get him his rest and get him right. All right, we were all looking to see a little bit from him on Thursday. I don't know if that'll be the case or not, but they've got to get that shoulder right. If his shoulder's right and he's physically fine, then I like Dak. I've long said he's got all the intangibles. He's a winner. He's a leader of men. They love him in the locker room. He can galvanize those guys. He's tough physically and mentally. We know he can run the football. Over the last couple years,